Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, Doom Ministry Gaming, and today I'm going to be sharing with you 5 ways in which you can improve the defenses of your character. Now, these aren't earth-shattering or groundbreaking tips and tricks. These are simply 5 things that I find are often overlooked by newer or average players, myself included. I find that I'm always forgetting maybe 1 or 2 of these things even though I'm late into the league. And so if you're finding that you're dying a lot, maybe comb through this list and see if you can check off all 5 of the boxes, and hopefully it'll help you die a little less. All right, so the first thing is max your chaos resistance. For whatever reason, the elemental resist, fire, cold, and lightning are treated kind of as its own thing and prioritized, and chaos resist is kind of just the separate thing that's off to the side that, is hard to focus on. I oftentimes find myself even, especially in league start, all my elemental resists are 75 and my chaos resist is minus 40. And I think that's understandable. Chaos resist is not easy to get. It is hard to get. The rolls are lower. A T1 chaos resist is much lower than a T1 elemental resist, and especially near league start, gear with chaos resistance can be pretty expensive. So as soon as you hit 75 and max that chaos resistance out, you're going to see an immediate step change in terms of how much you die. And the reason for that is because there's actually a lot of things in this game that do chaos damage that you probably don't realize is doing chaos damage. For example, burning ground and desecrated ground. Yes, there are 2 different ground effects that do damage over time to you. So improve your chaos resistance, make it a priority, and that will drastically increase your survivability. So the second thing is defensive flasks. Even 1 defensive flask can go a very long ways, and there are actually a lot of very good defensive flasks. For example, for my character, I use 2 different defensive flasks. The first here is a Rumi's Concoction, which gives me very good block chance, actually 20% chance to block on a perfect roll and 10% chance to block spell damage. And the other I use is a Quartz Flask, which gives me 10% chance to dodge attacks and 10% chance to dodge spell hits, and gives me phasing, which has been very good in a lot of situations. Phasing allows you to move through enemies, so especially in Ritual League, when you're surrounded in a small ritual circle with a lot of enemies, the phasing has allowed me to get out of a lot of sticky situations. So I've been really big on the Quartz Flask this league, but of course there's many other defensive flasks out there. I encourage you to have a look to see what they are. The other thing about flasks too, especially if they're not, or only if they're not unique, is the suffixes that you can roll on the flask. These are very good in terms of keeping you alive. So for example here, this life flask has staunching on it, which gives you immunity to bleed. This Quicksilver flask has warding on it, which gives you immunity to curses. So if you're running a map that has elemental weakness or enfeeble or temp chains or anything like that, if you have a warding flask, you'll be immune to those for the duration of the flask. And if you can keep your flask up, then basically you're immune to all those effects. Immunity to freeze is quite powerful. Dousing to remove ignite, there's the poison one. So those are all very important to have as well. And the great thing about regular defensive flask is that you can have the defensive flask plus 1 of these things that will add a lot of utility. All right, so the third thing is having a cast when damage taken setup. Now, if you don't know what that is, there is a support jewel right here that's called cast when damage taken. Basically, it's when you take a certain amount of damage, it's going to proc the spell that it's supporting. And so there are many options that you can support with cast when damage taken. And I'm just going to run through a few of the options that are common, that are popular, and give you an idea of how this works. So if you attach, for example, Immortal Call, is a very popular one, along with increased duration. Basically, when this procs, you're taking a whole bunch of less elemental and physical damage. And if you have insurance charges, it increases that effect even more. Other popular options are Withering Step, which kind of gives you elusive and the ability to phase. Again, phase, you can phase through enemies and phase out of sticky situations. Lightning Warp, which basically teleports you away from, whatever's hitting you. It's very good for teleporting away from melee, but it could also be, sometimes warp you into a bad situation as well. So it's a little less predictable than the other ones. A Frost Wall puts up a wall and separates you from the enemies that are attacking you. And, curses like Enfeeble or Tempt Chains will reduce the attack capabilities of the enemies that are hurting you. So this setup, if you can fit it into your character, is highly recommended because it really adds that extra layer of defense when you need it the most. All right, so the fourth thing is your Pantheon. Yes, that is right. If you push Y on your keyboard, you pull up your Pantheon screen. Remember this thing? The thing that you get as you play through the game? This is something I always forget about on every single one of my characters until I'm level 90 plus. I always forget about it, but there are a lot of defensive utility going on in this Pantheon. And furthermore, each one of these major and minor skills can be upgradable. So, for example, Soul of Lunaris, which is incredibly popular, can be upgradable 3 times to give you an extra 10% to avoid projectiles, 5% to dodge attacks, and then to avoid projectiles that have chained completely. So pick up a good one, upgrade it to the max, make the small one upgraded as well. There is a ton of utility here that's going to keep you alive. All right, so the fifth and final thing I want to talk about is the ability to avoid ailments. There are a ton of ailments in this game. Elemental ailments, non-damaging ailments, damaging ailments. You know, some ailments you may not even have heard of, like brittle or sap. And so, all these ailments can have some very adverse effects to your character. Some increase the amount of damage that you take, some reduce the amount of damage that you do. And a lot of times, too, with ailments, it's something that you don't easily notice it on you. For example, shock. It's not something, you get a little debuff icon, but when your eye isn't there, it's easy to not realize you have something bad on you. And so the ability to avoid it every now and then is a huge quality of life that I find does tangibly improve survivability. And so, there's a lot of ways you can get it. And I suggest that you just maybe do a little bit of quick research on how you can get some. You don't need a lot. A little bit here, a little bit there really adds up, goes a long way. For example, here on my character, I've got this, life cluster here, the thick skin life cluster. And you're really here for the life, but there is really a very nice added bonus here of the with the 3 nodes here, 16% chance to avoid elemental ailments. It's something I don't have to think about at all. So I encourage you to look at some of the different sources. Is there some nice clusters on the tree that you're pathing through that maybe is just a couple point off to the side, like this one here that you can get. Have a look at those. Those are easy to overlook, and I think adds a lot of value in terms of keeping your character alive. All right, everybody. So those are 5 suggestions on how you could potentially improve the defenses of your character. Now, those aren't the only 5 things you can do. There are a ton of defensive layers and mechanisms in this game I haven't even mentioned, like endurance charges, block, dodge, evade, defensive auras. And so I encourage you to have a look at some of those. The 5 I described are simply the ones that I find are most commonly overlooked, I would say. For the average player, these are 5 things I find oftentimes for myself that I miss. And so it's just a quick reminder more than anything of the things that you can do, basic things, um, that you can do to improve your survivability. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope that was helpful. And if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I also stream on Twitch Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Times are in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.